client was a Fortune 500 company, specifically in the field of communications and media, and their concern was how can they improve their communications internally. Specifically, they saw the concern with executives at the VP level, and they were trying to figure out how they could communicate through their middle managers and eventually get to the direct level employees. What Best Practices was able to do, take a look at where the cause of this was and understand that the cause really lied within the middle management level. In effect, they were a bottleneck that was causing this communication disruption. We also took it a step further. We needed to understand how our client differed from other clients. So we benchmarked several of their competitors and asked them how would they rate their communications among their middle managers. And as you can see, more than half, actually more than 75% of our entire benchmark class either said that they would rate their communications as good or neutral. Conversely, our client put theirs at fair, which actually was in the bottom fifth of those who were ranked. So what we needed to do next was understand what other things could we glean from these companies, from this 75% who saw their activities as better. What could we get from them? So we analyzed those companies and their findings. We also decided to benchmark some of the high performing companies for best practices. And then finally, we decided to conduct discussions with leaders within the field, because those who are living it on a daily basis would have the best insights. We asked the benchmark class an entire series of questions. We were really interested in gaining an overall view of how important they saw communications training throughout the entire process, including the training for new employees and making sure that they understood how to communicate between superiors and subordinates. So here's one question in particular, which was, for new employees, how do you train them? And what percentage of time are you training them for on-the-job training, for in-class training, and for online courses or modules? As you can see, nearly 60% of all time on average was dedicated to on-the-job training, which basically meant that about 6 in 10 of the minutes that were used for on-the-job training. However, there was more formalized structured training on average as well. In-class training, where people were learning from others who were more experienced, you can see garnered about 30% of the time that was used, and another 20% of the time were used in some sort of module or online course. Now, if you take a look at our client, you can see that informal training was basically the only way that they were utilizing any sort of communication training for new employees. In fact, only 10% of any time that was utilized for education training was actually used for in-classroom training. That's less than 1/3 of the average. As well, only 5% of any type of training was used in online courses or modules. That's actually 1/4 of the average. So you can see our client was really struggling from the beginning, because not only were they not effectively communicating to people throughout their time at the company, but they also were not effectively training them in the beginning in order to ensure that new people who came in had the ability to communicate effectively throughout the company. So we made several recommendations that we thought would help them. The first was to embrace new media as a tool for quick information dissemination. One of the things that we noticed was that email was not necessarily as important of a tool in today's time as it used to be. In fact, so many emails are being sent out that people are depending less and less on emails nowadays. We also told them that introducing message recall testing would help to increase their communication effectiveness. And by message recall testing, what we meant was that they should make sure to follow up with some of the messages that were being sent to ensure that what they wanted deployed actually got to the ground level employees. We saw that companies who were best at communicating were able to best utilize this. Next was informing middle management of the initiatives that were going on. One of the things that we saw among some of our more effective companies was that they were making sure that at least on a quarterly basis their senior management was communicating to the middle managers the initiatives of the company. And so when they asked for different communication type messages to be sent, they were alert and aware of the importance of those messages, and they sent them promptly. However, our client didn't communicate any of those sorts of messages to the middle management, and so we felt that that was part of the disconnect that was happening there. And then finally, introducing communication effectiveness criteria in hiring and performance reviews. As we saw on the last slide, it's really important to ensure that people who are being hired for their positions can communicate well. And this is something that we saw in our highly effective companies, but what we did not see in our client's company. And so these were 4 recommendations that we thought were important.